Sometimes it's just better to start all over again. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 video game reboots.
What the heck is that?
Just so there's no confusion, reboots are games in the franchise that either start its continuity all over again and or completely redesign the gameplay. Games that stayed true to the original with some fine-tuning are considered remakes, and we already have a list for those games. Also, games that had similar gameplay when going from 2D to 3D are considered 3D transitional games, and those are games like Ocarina of Time and GTA 3. So remember, if you don't see a reboot on this list, it's probably because the original was better.
Not in a million years.
Number 10, Donkey Kong Country Returns. Let's start things off with the iconic video game Ape. The original developer Rare was sadly no longer in partnership with Nintendo. Thus, it was up to Retro Studios to bring the series back to form, bringing in brand new villains, faster gameplay, and additional co-op options. We still think Diddy's Conquest is the best in the franchise, but this game is definitely better than the original. Number 9, Doom 3.
Welcome to the dungeon, Marine. Most unexciting place on Mars.
Don't let the name fool you. While it's got a 3 in the title, that could be regarded as Doom Cubed. It's essentially a reboot as it disregards any previous storylines in favor of starting all over again.
The devil is real. I know. I built his cage.
I'm getting abnormal readings here.
Sporting incredibly dark environments that force you to cling to your flashlight, this scarefest makes the original feel like a high school play when you compare the terrifying atmosphere.
Jeez! Do you make a habit of sneaking up on people?
Number 8, Rayman Origins. The original Rayman was on the PS1, Saturn, and PC, and its sequel quickly transitioned the limbless hero from 2D to 3D. So 16 years after his debut, Ubisoft decided to return Rayman to his roots with this well-crafted HD 2D platformer. Bringing in co-op play and brand new vibrant levels while retaining the charm of the original, it was great to see Rayman finally returning to his roots.
Can't let you do that, Star Fox.
Number 7, Star Fox 64. Known as Lilat Wars in Europe, the original game on the SNES was a technical gem, but was still restricted by the hardware at the time. Thus, the game's storyline got a complete do-over 5 years later on the N64.
What the heck?
The R-Wings were more agile, there were more planets to explore, and different routes to get there, and of course, it was filled to the brim with hilariously cheesy dialogue.
Do a barrel roll!
The game later barrel rolled its way onto the 3DS with improved textures and lighting effects. Very nice.
Hey, it was mine!
Number 6, Tomb Raider. The series protagonist Lara Croft is considered one of the most iconic video game protagonists ever, in part thanks to her proportionally questionable physique. But with this reboot opting for an origin story, Lara was given a more believable figure and a more fleshed out personality, as she was pitted in a brutal fight for survival.
What am I doing?
It's only at number 6, because this is actually the second time the series has been rebooted, and that's a habit we don't want Square Enix to get too comfortable with.
Lara Croft, you are my hero!
Number 5, Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat in the 90s was one of the most controversial franchises thanks to its unapologetic violence. But in the early 2000s, with the series now in 3D and getting more ridiculous characters, things got a bit out of hand.
You will regret your impulsiveness.
That's when the 2011 reboot came in, completely redesigning the fighting style, making it easier to pull off combos, and retelling the events of the first 3 games with a few new surprises.
A challenge! Scorpion versus Cyrax and Sector.
Your obsession with Sub-Zero ends here.
Number 4, Metroid Prime. We almost disregarded this one as it started to lean closer to spin-off than reboot, But because it also spawned its own series with 2 sequels and another spin-off with the main storyline getting a do-over, it stays in reboot territory. Going for a first-person perspective that allowed more intense combat while faithfully staying true to the franchise's non-linear exploration, Metroid Prime became an instant classic that is still fun to play. Number 3, XCOM: Enemy Unknown.
Hello, Commander. We require your assistance with a unique matter.
The original game, XCOM UFO Defense, or UFO Enemy Unknown, as it was known in Europe, centered around isometric turn-based strategy that forced players to juggle many elements at once.
Taken care of.
This reboot was streamlined to remove any unnecessary padding and upped the pace of the missions significantly, while retaining the turn-based combat and brutal permadeath feature of its predecessor.
You're telling me that we should risk the lives of our troops so we can take one of these things alive?
Number 2, Fallout 3. The original Fallout games were isometric, turn-based RPGs, and under the normal circumstances of turning an RPG into an FPS, we would have gotten out the torches and pitchforks.
But don't bother going to DC. The place is a war zone.
But Fallout 3 did the truly unthinkable by reimagining the franchise into a vast open world from a real-time, if possible, first-person perspective, while retaining the RPG elements. It is a bit of a stretch for this list, hence why it's not number 1, but it's still an incredible adventure from start to finish.
Here, take a few radiation chems, as my little way of saying, I'm sorry I twisted your DNA like a kitten with a ball of yarn.
Before we get to the top spot, let's have a look at some honorable mentions. Number 1, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. The original series was memorable, but its pacing was very slow, and its first 3D attempt proved it needed to start over. In came The Sands of Time, which not only remains the best game in the series, but a fine example of a reboot done right.
As a child, I dreamed of it and longed to see it with my own eyes.
Sands of Time was notable for bringing in acrobatic-style 3D platforming, as well as the ability to reverse time in case you screw up. Surprisingly, this series got a second reboot, but it couldn't live up to this masterpiece.
I would give him what he sought. I would plunge it into his foul and treacherous heart.
Do you agree with our list?
No! Stop!
What franchise reboots did you enjoy the most? For more redefined top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Good riddance! That was just burned!